Two. Comrades and friends, keep tooting your horns because tomorrow is polling day. We are Scottish Labour and we are proud of the campaign that we are running across the country. With some of our candidates here today, and I just want to read out the list of wonderful candidates across Glasgow. I've written on my hand. James Kelly and Rutherglen, Eva Murray, Martin McElroy, there he is, sitting on the top of his car. Kieran O'Neill running a wonderful campaign. Craig Carson, Pam Duncan-Clancy, Glasgow Kelvin, Zubair from Southside, and of course, our wonderful leader, Anat Sarwar, taking on the First Minister in her constituency and running a wonderful campaign. And all of our list campaign candidates too. Paul Sweeney, Willie Docherty, they are out there fighting for every vote, and we are proud of them all and all of the candidates across Scotland. I'm Polly McNeill, and I'm the candidate for Labour in Glasgow Shettleston. And I'm very proud, comrades, that I'm also Labour's candidate number 1 on the Glasgow regional list. And that is thanks to the commitment of our leader, Anat Sarwar, to make sure that women's representation is top of our priorities. Comrades, there has never been an election where we've had so much at stake for our country and for our families. I've had the privilege of representing this wonderful city of Glasgow for 17 years, and I know it well. But I've never feared so much for the people impacted on by an unexpected global pandemic, which has turned their world upside down. In the last 48 hours, as I still do my casework and still represent people, I have brides on the phone crying because they don't know how to move their wedding dates. I've had companies distraught at the lack of support they've had through this pandemic. I've had young people worried about their jobs and they've not yet had an appointment for the job centre. Comrades, we must support all of our people, all of our businesses. Anyone affected by this pandemic should not be unsupported, and too many have, and it's Scottish Labour that will stand up for them. But we desperately need a plan for our city of Glasgow, so dependent on hospitality, tourism and retail jobs. We need a serious recovery plan that only Labour can provide. It's only Scottish Labour that will hold Nicola Sturgeon and her ministers to account for the many failures to look after these people and these industries. It was only at the beginning of last week that the music industry, this is the city of music, and they warned that there would be a collapse of the music industry if there was not support. And interestingly, not one cheep in response from the SNP in their campaign. I am proud that our leader has stood out for music and the many musicians and the many people who survive on a very low wage in that industry. It's only Labour that will ensure that the next 5 years of the recovery is first. The Scottish Labour who will stand up for the rest of Scotland. And our relentless mission to stand up for people so affected by hardship and poverty. We face, unfortunately, a tsunami of child poverty and a jobs crisis amongst our young people we have not seen since the 1980s or the bank crash. So it's Labour will stand up like never before for its citizens. We will demand a recovery first, not a referendum will be damaging to Scotland's interests. That's what we stand for. That's what we will fight for with all our breath and all our representatives. Give Labour the mandate to do that for the people of Scotland. So we've got some speakers this afternoon. It's actually still in the morning, isn't it? This morning. And our next speaker is Pam Duncan-Clancy. Now, Pam is our candidate in Glasgow, Kelvin. And she has been out in all the weathers, fighting for every vote. Come on up on the stage, Pam. Pam is also on our Glasgow list. And she is going to smash it like she always does. Pam, over to you.
Thank you, Pauline. Friends, comrades, what a day! And what an incredible honour it is to be here to represent our party and our movement in the election tomorrow. And to share this stage this morning with three giants of our movement. The man who'll need no introduction later, former Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Gordon Brown. The fierce and strident campaigner for equalities and the right to housing. Top of our list here in Glasgow, and our candidate in Shettleston, the outstanding Pauline McNeill. And last, but by no means least, the man whose commitment to equality and human rights has never wavered, has given me the confidence to stand up for you and be counted. The man who has led the charge for a parliament focused on recovery, and the man who has kept his dance moves a secret for far too long. The leader of our movement and someone I'm proud to call a friend, Anas Sarwar. What an honour and privilege it is to be here to represent such wonderful people today. Friends, the last year has been tough for all of us. The pandemic has separated us from our friends and our family. Despite that, we've come together like never before. The truth is, though, that for too many people, things were impossible before COVID. Poverty was already rife. Insecure and precarious work was far too common. Social care was creaking at the seams, and inequality was holding people back. Last night on the Leaders' Debate, the First Minister said she was committed to social care. Let me tell you this, social care is on its knees. Disabled people have been left without the care they need. Carers are burnt out and are so poorly paid that they're going to food banks. Paid carers are worked to the bone. So, First Minister, don't tell us after 14 years you're committed to social care. We cannot go back to that normal. We must go forward to better. Only by using both votes Labour tomorrow can we do that. Only by using both your votes for Labour can we guarantee a parliament that is laser focused on recovery. And our plans for recovery are as important as they are bold. A recovery in the NHS and social care that funds mental health services properly and builds the national care service we need. A jobs recovery that creates tens of thousands of jobs, guarantees a job for every young person and disabled person. A recovery in our climate that delivers a just transition and free bus travel for under 25s. And in our education that guarantees a reset for every young person who wants it. A recovery in our community guarantee. Our plan for recovery will rebuild a better Scotland than we've had before. And our manifesto for the future will transform it to a place where we all live up to our full potential. That's the sort of bold change we need. Change, shaking up the status quo, isn't easy. But friends, comrades, we know that. Nothing worth fighting for ever is easy. We're going to need people in Parliament from tomorrow with grit and with guts. And in Glasgow, you need to look no further than the people you've seen on this stage and are bright to see on this stage today, and our fantastic candidates all across this city and Scotland, because that's who we are. If you send us to Parliament, we'll fight for all of us like our lives depend on it, because they really, really do. And if you use both votes for Labour tomorrow, you could make history by electing the first ever permanent wheelchair user to the Scottish Parliament. Don't leave any of this to chance. If you like what you see and you like what you hear, you need to vote for it tomorrow and tell everyone you know to do the same. Shout it from the rooftops. Friends, get out tomorrow. Vote early and vote Labour. Not once, but twice. Use your peach vote. Make doubly sure you get people in Parliament and a Parliament focused on recovery. Use both your votes for Labour tomorrow. And without further ado, I would like to introduce a man who reminds us exactly why we need Labour in Parliament, exactly why we need fighters all across this country representing our communities. What a great honour and privilege it is today for me to introduce to you the Right Honourable Gordon Brown.
Now you know why Pam Duncan-Clancy is not only the candidate for Kelvin, but should be the next member of the Scottish Parliament for Kelvin. And now you know why Pam and Polly McNeill are on the Glasgow list and should be elected to the Scottish Parliament. You know, it's a pleasure to be in Glasgow today, the city where I was born, home to the Labour movement for 100 years, the city whose public services, libraries, public amenities, community services are being neglected and betrayed by the SNP, and that's why we need Labour members of the Scottish Parliament from Glasgow elected on Thursday. And I'm here in support of Anas Sarwar, the new voice of Labour in Scotland. And I'm proud to be able to congratulate him on the energy, the enthusiasm, the effectiveness of the campaign he has mounted, his first campaign as leader and the most successful campaign in this election. And it's not only one first. This is the first public rally for a year that I've addressed. This is the first open-air rally of this campaign. And when I was asked to come to drive up Labour support, little did I know that literally Labour support would drive in and drive up the first traffic jam, and one that's worth waiting for, one that's for a good cause. Because I'm here also to stand up for all the Labour candidates, from Fife, my county, to Glasgow here, to right across Scotland. And I want to send one very clear message today. If you want Labour members of Parliament elected to the Scottish Parliament, you've got to vote Labour once and then vote Labour on the second ballot too to get members of Parliament elected. And I'm here also to stand up for the very deep and profound concerns of the Scottish people. We have a health crisis. We have a social care crisis. We have an education crisis. We have a jobs crisis. We have a poverty crisis. We have a climate crisis. And it's not the SNP that's going to solve that crisis. We need Labour members of the Scottish Parliament elected to do so. You know, I want to congratulate and thank all those members of the health service and the social care services, the nurses, the doctors, the midwives, the ambulance workers, the caterers, the cleaners, all those who have served the health service over these last few years. I want to thank them for the service they've given, for the contribution they've made, for the dedication they've showed, and for the difference they've made, the difference in lives saved rather than lives lost. And the one way we can thank them is ensuring that in the incoming Parliament, we're not spending our time talking about a referendum, we're spending our time talking about the refinancing of the health service and the social care services of Scotland. You know, 7,000 cancer patients undetected, 300,000 or so on waiting lists, 500,000 people who were to be screened and have not been screened, £1 billion every year taken from the NHS budget by the SNP, which should have been spent on healthcare. And that's why it's the Labour Party who built the health service, the Labour Party who refinanced the health service under a Labour government, the Labour Party that believes in the health service, the Labour Party that puts health services first. It's the Labour Party that will rescue the health service in this country. And that's why you've got to vote for MSPs who will campaign for a better deal for the health service. Because I tell you this, if the SNP could not solve the health problem, the waiting list problem, the mental health problem, the social care problem in any one of the 14 years they've been in government, they will never solve the problem now. That's why they should give way to the Labour Party who can do it. And you know, it's not just a health crisis, it's the education crisis. 2/3 of Scottish disadvantaged school children have never had the chance of learning over the last year. So many Scottish children seeing inequality rising and not falling in the Scottish education system. You know, every indicator that should be going up is going down, and every indicator that should be going down is going up. And they've even refused to publish the OECD study that shows the falling standards until after the election. And that's why I repeat again, if they can't solve the education problem in 14 years in government in any one of them, make way for the Labour Party who can. And you know, it's a job crisis too. 100,000 Scots have lost their jobs. 300,000 Scots are furloughed, not knowing whether they can get back to work. Perhaps worst of all, there's almost as many as 100,000 young people who were promised jobs, training, or education and who are being denied the promise that was being made. And you can't rely on the SNP to solve this problem. We need Labour MSPs who believe in the policy of full employment. And we need Labour MSPs who will link up with Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, Newcastle, Sheffield, Bristol, mayors in all these places, and the First Minister of Wales. Because in an integrated economy like ours, you cannot win full employment in one country unless you work for full employment in all countries of the United Kingdom. And that's what we want to do, cooperate to solve the problem. And you know the worst problem of all? Poverty amongst children, rising dramatically. 300,000 children in poverty in Scotland, and the figure going up during this pandemic. 1 in 4 children going to school ill-clad and hungry. 1 in 2 in parts of my old constituency and here in Glasgow. And poverty is not just a scandal. For children, it is a crime. And I say you can't solve the problem of child poverty without using all the resources of the United Kingdom. And that's why instead of independence and getting out of the United Kingdom, we need to force the case for resources from all over the United Kingdom to fight child poverty in our midst. And that's what we're going to do. And you know, that's the difference. We want to end child poverty. The SNP want to end the United Kingdom. They wake up in the morning thinking about a referendum. We wake up in the morning wanting a recovery. They go to bed at night dreaming of separation. We go to bed dreaming of social justice. That's what we stand for. They spend all the waking hours trying to change our borders. We spend all our waking hours trying to change society. They're fighting a war against the union. We are fighting a war against poverty, deprivation, ill health, illiteracy. We're fighting a war against environmental dereliction. And I tell you this, given their obsession with independence, economic inequality and social justice would last until doomsday if the SNP is all that confronts it. That's why we need Labour MSPs. And you know, it's not just one government that's failed us. It's 2. Boris Johnson, you know, it's not just the undisclosed gifts. It's not just the unreported conflicts of interest. It's not just the undeclared lobbying. It's not just the behavior of this government that angers me. It's their values. Boris Johnson, remember what he said. Creating a new vaccine. Winning the war against the virus. What did he say? a triumph of capitalism and greed. The doctors and nurses, they weren't winning the war. The scientists who did the work voluntarily, were they not winning the war? All the people who have suffered the loss of family members, their fortitude, were they not fighting this war? I tell you, it is not greed and capitalism that's winning the war against this vaccine. It is the NHS and the people of this country. It's caring, sharing, cooperation, solidarity. And these are the values that we believe in. I tell you, Scotland is better than Nicola Sturgeon's NSP. And Britain is better than Boris Johnson's Conservatives. We are the people who believe in empathy with others, not enmity to others. We're the people who believe in solidarity with our neighbours and not with separation from our neighbours. We are the people who believe in cooperation and not in conflict, and think what we can achieve when we all work together. Now, I know we are fighting against the odds. I know we've been up against the odds in these difficult circumstances and situations. But just remember this: the Labour movement was born against the odds. We grew against the odds. We created a national health service against the odds. We worked for full employment and a minimum wage against the odds. And I tell you, our values will succeed whatever the odds. And I say to you, have confidence. Have confidence today that we are fighting and defending the values that matter. Have confidence that the Scottish people's values and those of the Labour Party are the same values. And have confidence that a vote for this patriotic, this progressive, this principled Labour Party, a vote once and a vote twice in both ballots for Labour, voting for Scotland's party of social justice. That is a vote you can be proud of. Proud of tomorrow. Proud of in the next few weeks. Proud of for years to come. Be proud. Be confident. Vote Labour. Vote Labour in the first and second ballot. Vote Labour tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. An incredible inspiration, as always. I think I speak for every activist, because every candidate is an activist. Every activist who's been out on the doorstep asking people what they think about how they'll vote in the next election. I know I speak for all of them when I say that the reception they've received on the doorstep for Anas Sarwar has not been like that for over a decade. The warmth towards Labour because of our leader Anas Sarwar is what I'm experiencing in the doorstep every single day. He's someone I do call a friend, but above all, he has been an incredible leader. In almost 9 weeks, it is amazing how he's turned this campaign into something which means that we believe it. And I think the people of Scotland trust Anas Sarwar in this campaign. And that's one of the most important things. I've known Anas since he was in his 20s, and I was always really impressed by his knowledge, his communication skills, but his deep friendship, a genuine person that people like, and that is rare in politics. As Pam Duncan-Clancy said earlier, we've learned even more about Anas Sarwar. We did know, I did suspect actually he did have a couple of mean dance moves up his sleeve. I probably kind of knew that. And he smashed a few journalists on FIFA 21, no surprise there. And I actually do wonder what's been going on in these buses now. Here's us thinking that all this time that they have been working hard. They have been working so hard. It gives me the most amazing pleasure to ask our leader for Scottish Labour, Anas Sarwar, Scottish Labour leader, to come and address you. Anas Sarwar, everybody, our leader. Come on! Get those hands touching! Because
We all fired up? Thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Pam. And thank you, Gordon, for those incredible speeches. What a phenomenal MSP we have in Pauline McNeill, someone who has fought for social justice and equality, not just here in Glasgow or in Scotland, but indeed across the world. So a big cheer for Pauline McNeill. And they say politics, or the skeptics say politics doesn't change anything. Anyone that looks at or listens to Pam Duncan-Clancy knows that politics makes a difference. And I cannot wait till the night that we count, or maybe the day, depending how the ballots go. I can't wait till we announce Pam Duncan-Clancy as a new MSP, and something that'll be a moment of pride, not just for the Labour Party, but for the whole of Scotland. A big cheer for Pam Duncan-Clancy. And I also say to the critics that say politics doesn't make a difference, remember the difference that having a Prime Minister that has values, a Prime Minister that has belief, a Prime Minister that has principles makes. Gordon Brown halved child poverty in this country. That's the difference a Labour government makes. So a big cheer for Gordon Brown. Friends, I'm going to be straight up and honest with you, like I have been throughout this election campaign. I have never been prouder to be a member of the Labour Party than I am today. I have never been prouder to lead the Scottish Labour Party than I am today, because I have looked at all our activists, all our candidates, all our staff over the course of this campaign, and I know the determination, the energy that they are putting in to make the difference in this election campaign. So a massive cheer for all our candidates and all our staff. This campaign isn't about one day on the 6th of May. Be in no doubt, this campaign is part of a journey to having a Labour First Minister and a Labour government. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I will be the First Minister of this country with your and the SNP. And that's why I say directly to people across Scotland, if you agree with me, if you like what I'm saying, if you want to build that credible alternative, you have to vote Labour tomorrow in this election campaign. And I also say to them directly, don't fall for the con trick. If you want something different, if you want a different kind of leader, if you want a different kind of party, and you want a different kind of country, you've got to use both votes for Labour in this election campaign. Don't fall for the con trick. And who's this election campaign for? It's for the people, one of the 360,000 people across our country stuck on furlough, worried about if and when they'll have a job to go back to. That's who this election campaign is all about. It's about every single child across the country who, when you look in their eyes, you can see the impact this pandemic has had on them, their mental health and well-being. Our children missing out on almost a year of education. That's who this election campaign is all about. It's for those 1,500 children who are waiting over a year for the start of their mental health treatment. That's who this election campaign is all about. It's for those 7,000 missing cancer diagnoses across the country. That's who this election campaign is all about. It's for those 1 in 4 children across the country that live in poverty. That's who this election campaign is all about. And we are standing in the heart of Nicola Sturgeon's constituency, where 1 in 2, almost 50% of the children that live in this constituency live in poverty under Nicola Sturgeon's watch. That's who this election campaign is all about. And that's why I have not been shy to say that I am not going to allow this campaign in the midst of a pandemic, when lives and livelihoods have been lost and lives and livelihoods are still at risk. I refuse to only speak to half of the country. I refuse to only have a recovery plan that's for half of the country. I refuse to only represent the half of the country that represents the same views as I have on the Constitution. We have got to build a recovery that works for everyone. So again, I say directly, I don't care if you are yes or no. I don't care if you will leave or remain. Let's work together to rebuild this country we all love. That's the choice in this election campaign. Because if in the midst of a pandemic, when 10,000 of our fellow citizens have lost their lives, in the midst of a pandemic, when lives and livelihoods are still at risk, in the midst of a pandemic, when our deep-seated inequalities are even more deep and even more entrenched than they ever have been before, if even now we can't put aside what divides us, then I say directly, when? When? That's why this election campaign is about bringing our country back together. So I say directly to Nicola Sturgeon and to Douglas Ross, all the energy that you have put in on dividing our country, all the energy you have put in to separating people in our country on those binary choices of either leave or remain or yes or no. Just imagine for one moment, just imagine that all that time we've obsessed about what divides us, if we'd obsessed instead about ending poverty. Just imagine if we had spent that time obsessing about our children's education. Just imagine we had spent that time obsessing about the NHS. Just imagine the kind of country we could have built. Just imagine. But you don't have to just imagine. We have a plan. We have the ideas. We have the energy. We have the enthusiasm to build the kind of country we all want to see. Labour will build that fairer, more equal, more just, more greener nation together. And we're going to start that right now. So I will work in the national interest. I will not allow the one issue that divides us to stop us working together on the 99 issues that unite us, because that's how we build the fairer country together. So I say directly to you all, and I say directly to people watching at home, your job is on the ballot. Your children's education is on the ballot. The NHS is on the ballot. The climate emergency is on the ballot. And if you want us to confront those issues together, you have to use both votes for Labour tomorrow in the election campaign. You've got to use both your votes for Labour in that election campaign so we can build that fairer, greener, more equal nation together. So we can have a Labour government across this country. We can have a Labour First Minister across this country, and we can start the hard work of changing this country together. That's the choice that we face tomorrow. Are we ready for that change? Do we want that change? Do we want to bring this country back together? Do we want to unite our people? Do we want the Labour government? Do we want the Labour First Minister? Do we want a more equal Scotland? Do we want a more fairer Scotland? Do we want to end poverty? Do we want to fight the climate emergency? Do we want a jobs guarantee for young people? Do we want to end the climate emergency together? Do we want jobs in the economy across the country? Do we want social justice? If you want those things, make it both votes for Labour tomorrow. Thank you.